Hey, so today we're going in search of a big boat that sunk in a really small pond out in the middle of the forest up above 10,000 feet in the mountains. I mean, what? All right, so to understand the history of why this boat is sitting at the bottom of this pond, you have to go all the way back to 1859. So 1859 is when gold was found here in the Breckenridge area. Specifically, we're in the French Gulch area around Breckenridge. And just like in California 10 years before that, it kicked off a gold rush in Colorado. And prospectors, adventurers, people of all walks of life flocked to the high country in Colorado in hopes of finding gold. When they got here, initially the mining was pretty simple. It was called placer mining, which you might not know the term, but you know what it is. It's gold pan mining. And just like that iconic miner who came out here with the gold pan and stood in a creek, dipped it in, and then sifted through to find gold flakes or nuggets, that's exactly what they did. And for many years, that was the dominant way in which they were mining for gold. The problem was kind of twofold. One, it was slow and inefficient. Two, up here, the gold settlements where the real gold layers were actually 40 to 80, 90 feet down into the bedrock underneath the creeks. And so gold panning wasn't going to cut it. They became creative. And the first evolution of that was hydraulic mining. They brought out big water cannons into these valleys, and they essentially just blasted the topsoil, the boulders, brought down rocks. And it was faster than panning for sure, but it was still really inefficient. Once the rock came down, you had to have teams to actually pull the rock together, take it to a milling facility, crush it to get the ore to find those flakes or nuggets. By the end of the 1800s, engineers came up with a new way of mining. And it was something that could have leapt from Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. What they created was a monster, and it was called the Dredge Boat. So dredge boats were industrial beasts. They were kind of a mix of a bunch of different things. They took the hydraulic cannons and put them on the boats to break up the earth. But then they added a conveyor belt that had buckets that scooped the earth up. And as it processed it, it took it back to the main part of the boat, which was the milling facility. So they actually combined the milling facility and the mining facility into one. And the reason that it was a boat is that you would put these in the streams or the rivers, and essentially it would float along and just literally eat the earth. And it would create these pools where the boat sat on, and essentially you could float it around and take it wherever you wanted to go. The dredge boats era up here was roughly 1905 to early 1920s. This boat that we're gonna go see, the Reiling boat, Reiling dredge, it actually broke apart and sank in its place in 1922. There was an attempt to revive it unsuccessfully, and it just sat there. But it was actually one of 9 different dredge boats that operated in the French Creek area from that period of. We're definitely getting close now. I made it, and you can see I mean, this is just the skeleton of it. The boat itself would have had the milling operations in the center and been about 2 to almost 3 stories tall, and on a conveyor belt feeding that milling system. And it would have just been dangerous, dangerous work. I mean, between the complications associated with the early days of electricity, operating in water and standing ponds, with water cannons going off, with a huge beast eating hundreds of tons of rock, and sometimes operating on a 24-hour basis, you can imagine what kind of conditions were up here. So, pretty crazy, pretty amazing what they did. And you might wonder, why? Why do this? Why go through this effort in the rural Colorado? You know, at that time it was very rural. Why go through the effort? And, you know, it's the same thing as it's always been. It's about money and greed. In the window between 1905 and 1922, it's estimated that the 9 dredges in the French Gulch area here pulled out somewhere in the neighborhood of like $4.2 million worth of gold, which, you know, it doesn't sound like an astounding amount to us maybe today, but that's because that's in their dollars. If you fast forward and you add in inflation, we're talking in the neighborhood north of 125 to maybe even $150 million in today's currency. I mean, definitely not everybody got rich, but a handful of them did, very much so. Hey, thanks for coming along today. I did not anticipate it snowing. It snowed last night and it's supposed to snow tonight, but it turned out to be really great. If you are in the area and you want to check it out, super easy hike, maybe 2.5 miles. It's the B&B Trail. I will leave a link down below where you can find the trailhead. And yeah, well worth it to go out and see some of the, you know, local mining history and stuff a little off the beaten path from the resorts. If you're interested, subscribe. I'll be continuing to explore, you know, weird and Colorado history. And yeah, it'd be cool to have you along. Later.